Today, we're going to talk about the House of Wax and the House of Wax and Mystery of the Wax Museum. Not necessarily in that order. I have here the three versions of the exact same movie. However, this is one of those 2000s in name only remakes that ended up being glorious in its badity, that I loved it. It was innovative. It had a high budget. It didn't do so well, but in a way, it was still just very entertaining. Well, we're going to start with this one. Mystery of the Wax Museum was released in 1933 in Technicolor. I'm not just reading this upside down on the cover here. I actually knew that from already. In the 1930s, color picture was still an experiment in its experimental phase. Now, a couple decades prior, we did have color film in the form of painted film. If you remember Mr. Méliès, whatever his name is, I think it's French or something, during the 1890s to the 1910s, there was a method of painting film. Every single frame of film, people would go, it's like an assembly line of workers, boom, 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 boom. And let's see if I can give you a visual representation here. Let's say this is a film reel. Boom, 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 boom. Each one represents a single picture, single still frame. Now, every person would come in with their little painting tools and start painting things. Oh, they're gonna paint the sun a yellow color. They're gonna paint this dress pink. They're gonna paint the background and give it a little bit of a blue. And every single time, in every single frame, they would painstakingly color in the film. Until when it was finally played on a friggin' real projector, people go like, whoa, this stuff is in color. Well, that didn't last too long because technology was increasing at a vast rate, and that in a couple short decades, we actually got true color in film. This wasn't the first film in color, of course, no, but this was one of the first horror-based films in full color. This one, not this one. The 1933 version is one of the first films in color. Now, I did look this part up. This film was actually lost for a good while. The 1933 was just before a certain world war, or just after. It was things were starting to heat up. And over the course of a decade, this film was lost, thought to be lost for quite a while, for a couple decades even. But then it was found again. It was found again. They remade it and called it House of Wax. They found it again, and then when they produced the DVD copy here and the Blu-ray copy, and I think there might even be a 4K copy eventually, or if there is one already, and they pack the 1933 version into every copy of the House of Wax with Vincent Price. They don't do that with this one, of course. This is just a film on its own, but we'll get to that. We'll get to this one eventually. 1933 version and the 1953, and the 1950s version of House of Wax are essentially two versions of the exact same film, while this one's a completely different film. So we're going to talk about these two first in regards to comparisons and the differences, and which one film left out, what one film added on to, etc. Because both films are great, and both films have pros and a little bit of cons, just a little bit, but both of them have pros in the means of a reason you should watch it. Because this film, the 1930s version, includes a very good character that does not exist in the 1950s version. They kind of combined this character in this version into a character in this version. Who am I talking about? In the 1930s version, there was a very take-charge investigative reporter. I forget her name. She was blonde. But this lady was a real take-charge powerhouse. She was a protagonist that was decades ahead of her time. She was a real Amelia Earhart in the regards that she would not take no for an answer. If you locked her out, she would break in. You were not gonna stop her from getting that story. And she was a talk a mile a minute type of person. And she was very entertaining. This person, suspected the wax person that I'm just going to call him Mr. Vincent Price, even though Vincent Price isn't in here in this version. I'm just going to call him that because I forget his name. Gregory or something. The Wax Man. We'll call him the Wax Man. Alright. So she believes that the Wax Man was kidnapping corpses and making little wax figures out of them. You know, he lost the use of his hands in a fire. You've probably seen this film, and if you haven't, then I'll have to briefly talk about the intro. Both of them have the exact same intro. The intro is, this man, the Wax Man, is a master sculptor. He has sculpted various forms of very lifelike wax figures all throughout his little museum of wax. He was a believer in true beauty, and the most beautiful figure that he had created was the figure of Marie Antoinette. And that's in both versions here. Now, Marie Antoinette was like his true divine inspiration. It was his greatest creation, and he believed that he brought them all to life, and he talked to them. He was a little bit kooky. Well, he couldn't afford to make all this stuff by himself. He's just the artist. He needs a benefactor to make the art so that the benefactor can market it and display it, and they both make money. Because he's not the marketer person, he's just the artist. So the marketing guy says, we're losing money, people aren't interested in this crap anymore. And he's like, well, what do you want me to do about it? I can find a new benefactor, but you're gonna have to give me some time. And the other guy says, we don't have any time, I have an idea. This place is insured, let's burn it down and get some money. And he's like, don't you dare burn my crap down. They have a fight. The Wax Man loses, and the benefactor burns the place down, and he escapes. The Wax Man is assumed to be dead. A couple years later, the Wax Man resurfaces. He kills the benefactor, and he displays the benefactor's body in his new museum. He is forming a new museum. He's in a wheelchair now. He's got hands that are incapable of sculpting, but he could do regular things with them. Kind of like Doctor Strange's hands, in a way. That's how useful they are. He can pick up things and do everyday tasks with these hands, but he can't really fine-tune things. So he has pupils to help him carve the wax face. At least that's what he says he has them for. So, the investigator reporter lady in this version finds that some of these people look very similar to various disappearing corpses that have been disappearing from the morgues lately, and from recently deceased people as well. He said they look very lifelike to these people. She looks at the Joan of Arc figure and says, this person looks like somebody who died recently. And then she looks at this other figure and says, well, that person looks like this person. And then she starts to investigate the Wax Museum, trying to get all sorts of information. Tries to talk to the Wax Man. And the Wax Man says, blah, 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 but you shouldn't be here. Get out. You'll come back when we have officially opened. And she's like, no, I'm going to come in later. And blah, 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 blah. And then there's this other lady who looks like the spitting image of the Wax Man's Marie Antoinette, and then he's gonna start going after her. I believe that the lady who looks like the Wax Man's Marie Antoinette is the roommate of the reporter lady. I'm just spitballing here. I was pretty half paying attention during this part of the film, but there was a lady who looked like the Marie Antoinette that the Wax Man was trying to stalk afterwards. And while he's stalking that lady, the reporter lady is doing all sorts of investigating on her own, trying to figure out more and more things about him. And she eventually learns that one of the pupils is a former criminal and all that stuff, so she gets the cops to go after them. She gets the cops to kidnap him, and they learn that he's a smuggler. He's a smuggler of alcohol. Bootlegger. And, I believe this is during the Prohibition era. I'm not entirely well versed in modern history in regards to Prohibition, but Prohibition was around this time. And they talked about it, they mentioned it. Bootleggers did bring in booze through coffins and crap, through morgues and in hearses and all that crap. They would find any way they could to traffic in alcohol. The cops would even be drinking the alcohol, man. The cops would even be doing it. So if you gave them a few bottles, they would let you slide, so long as everybody got to dip their fingers into the alcohol. This bill really did not work. It failed, man. But that's what they talked about in here. So they arrested the man for being bootlegger, but they still kept the booze for themselves, of course. And so now the reporter lady is looking about, trying to figure all this stuff out. And the wax man, kidnaps the lady who looks like Marie Antoinette. He's about to turn her into a wax figure so that he can make her into his new Marie Antoinette figure. The reporter lady gets the cops to show up, and they capture the wax man, and he fails to turn the lady into his Marie Antoinette figure. That's basically what happens in this version as well, minus the reporter lady. The reporter lady and all that she does is combined into the character of the lady who becomes the Marie Antoinette. I both like and dislike this. I like it because the lady who becomes the Marie Antoinette in the 30s version has absolutely no character, no purpose, other than she looks like Marie Antoinette and he wants to grab her for that. So I understand trying to expand on this person's character and putting the reporter lady's character into her, but they didn't take all of the strong characteristics of the reporter lady in this version into this one. They didn't do it. They just took all of the investigating part where she suspects the wax man of kidnapping people and all that crap. They took that and they added it into her character, but they got rid of all the strong lady, all the investigative reporter and all that crap. They got rid of all of that stuff because she was a very atypical, non-typical type of character for this time period. She was a very gung-ho, take charge type of woman, and that was amazing to see. You don't see that often, right? She even got her own spin-off series where she got to do her own reporter lady crap. I don't think it's the same character, but she played the same type of archetype. It ended up being popular. And I really liked this character, but they completely wrote her out of the story and wrote whatever was important to the plot into the lady who becomes Marie Antoinette. I forget her name, too. But we're just going to call her the Marie Antoinette. In House of Wax, they expand upon the story a fair bit. If you notice on the back here, I don't know if you can see it, but the 30s version here says that it is 77 minutes. The 50s version says it is 88 minutes. The extra 11 minutes is spent very wisely. Every minute of runtime is utilized properly to expand on questions that you may have had in here. There are longer chase scenes. There are longer pieces of dialogue between characters to give you an idea of what their motivations are. There's an extended chase scene at the start where the wax man finds his broker, benefactor, and the lady that the benefactor was sleeping with, and he takes care of those people, and the lady who looks like Marie Antoinette notices this, and he chases her down. There's a whole bit of new story here trying to set that up. Because they wrote out the reporter lady, they had to introduce the Marie Antoinette character very early, and they had to give her a reason to be as important as she is, and I think they did a really good job. My only gripe is that the character in here, the reporter lady, was a very strong character, and I really wish they kept that here. You could still keep her as the Marie Antoinette lady, but you should just make the reporter lady the Marie Antoinette lady in this. But I don't know what changed in 2 decades, but something changed in 2 decades, and she was gone. And they replaced it with the typical, the horror trope with the female protagonist. They replaced it with the typical female protagonist. This was pretty atypical. I've seen a lot of horror movies. I just haven't seen a lot of 50s, 40s, 30s horror movies. But of the ones I've seen, I haven't seen too many that are like the character in the 30s version. You could probably find the 30s version right now on the internet anywhere. And if you can't, just buy this DVD or the Blu-ray or whatever, and you'll be able to get it on there. It doesn't matter which version you buy. They're both good. They're very well quality. They're very well preserved. There's some little glitches in the film translation, but the sound's fine. Everything's fine. In this, I definitely prefer Vincent Price's character to the other guy, the Wax Man, in here. Vincent Price's character really gives life and motive and all sorts of other crap to the Wax Man character. The Marie Antoinette character is expanded, like I said, but all the important parts of the reporter lady are just put onto her. So, the reporter lady's personality traits feel weaker in her, but the Marie Antoinette character in this feels stronger in this version, if that makes sense. Overall, both are very good movies, and I recommend you watch both of them back to back, preferably the 30s one first and the 50s one second. You can skip this one if you like, or you could just watch this without watching this at any time. But this is not like the others. It's not like the others at all. House of Wax, the 2000s version, I probably couldn't tell you. I probably could tell you when it was made. 2004, 2005, somewhere around there. 2005. Somewhere around there. And it stars characters. Probably the one person you would recognize immediately would be Jared Padalecki, Sam Winchester. Sam Winchester's character is not a major character. He's a supporting cast. He is one of the first, if not the first, cast to die off. It's a typical story where a bunch of college kids go on a trip, they encounter something spooky, and then one by one they die. That's about it. And the House of Wax is just a placeholder. The House of Wax does exist in a small town that this group of college kids visit. And they explore this House of Wax. And one of the crazy wax figure sculptor guys starts killing them off one by one and turning them into wax sculptures. Only one of them we get to see fully turned into a wax sculpture. Another one we get to see partially turned into it, and then we see two corpses that were going to be turned into wax sculptures, but they just didn't have enough time to get to that. If I'm skimming through a lot of this stuff, it's just because there's not a lot worth talking about. This is one of those films that you should just plug into your player and watch. There's not too much I could say. The effects are fine. I like the effects. I like the wax figures. I like the horror elements. I like the gore elements. A lot of it doesn't make sense, especially when Jared Padalecki is turned into a wax figure and another person finds him and Jared's still alive. His eyes are still moving, and he pokes at the wax skin and peels it off. And beneath the wax skin is his actual muscle tissue and crap. And there's no skin. Apparently, the wax fused with the skin and ripped it. I have no idea. But it looked fine. It looked cool. It didn't need to be there, but it looked cool. I guess that's what you could say about this entire film. It didn't need to exist, but it looks cool. That's what you could say about a lot of 2000s horror films. It didn't need to exist, but it looks cool. If you want to watch it, please watch it. Experience it. This is a film you might really, really enjoy. In an entertainment value, you're probably not going to call this the best film you've ever seen. You're probably not even going to call it a good film. But it's going to be a film that you may find yourself enjoying. I enjoyed it really, really highly. I would say that both of these are immensely superior to this version. Immensely. If I had to rank the three films, I would say the 50s version is the best, followed by the 30s version, followed by the 2000s version. The best character in all three films is probably Vincent Price's Wax Man. The second best character in all three films is probably the reporter lady. That's about all I can tell you. This is worth watching. These two right here. This, if you are morbidly interested to see what they did to House of Wax, then watch them. I would, if you want, I would say watch all three on a day off if you have the morbid curiosity to do so and the means to find all three of these films. Either way, be imaginative.